Well, good morning, Lake Highlands, White Rock Democrats. You excited to be here? Welcome to our April meeting. It is Earth Month, so we do have a special topic today to talk about sustainable Dallas, which I'm very excited about, and we'll get into that more in a moment or two. My name is Brian Hasenbauer. I'm the Vice President of the club, and I'll be kind of leading the meeting today. So what we have on tap is first we're going to start out with having we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, because that's an important thing. We're then going to have candidates come up and talk a little bit about their campaigns for a moment or two, so you can know who you're voting for when you go to the polls coming up. We do have some important races coming up in Dallas County, so we want to have you meet those candidates. And then we'll get into our program, which we do have one speaker via Zoom and one person in person. So we're excited about that. And this will be about sustainable Dallas and what Dallas is doing to try to become a cleaner, greener environment for everyone in the city of Dallas and how that impacts surrounding communities. And we'll cover a lot of topics. So it's going to be really exciting, educational. And then after that, we'll take questions from the audience, of course, which we always do. And then we'll follow that by a short membership meeting where please stick around for that if you're a member, because we do have some important leadership things to talk about today. We're going to be introducing two nominees from the board of directors, the executive committee, to present to the club for voting and acceptance. We'll also take some floor votes if anyone wants to step up and run for those positions. The positions are president and vice president of activities / events. And so we're excited about that. So we're trying to grow our volunteer pool. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and have candidates come up. So if you are, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. That's why we keep forgetting the flag. So we do have the flag over here. So if you wouldn't mind standing up. And Tim, I like it when Tim leads us from the back.
Ready? Again?
Ready.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
For all. Great. Thank you, everyone, for reminding me about the pledge. I said that to Tim at the beginning of the meeting. I'm like, one thing we need to make sure we do is the Pledge of Allegiance. So, okay. First speaker, come on up, Alexandra. Say hello to everyone. Good to see you here. And the camera's right there.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For those I haven't met, my name is Alexandra Guillot, and I am running for House District 114. After the March 1st primaries, I did come in first place, just not enough to win outright, so I am in a runoff. Those runoff dates are May 24th, and early voting is the 16th through the 20th. I wanted to make sure and come by. This is one of my favorite organizations. I joined, I believe, maybe during the pandemic. I've been involved in the Dallas community for over a decade, whether it's been through nonprofits or partisan organizations or campaigns. I really love the Dallas community and specifically the East Dallas community. I've lived in Casa Linda for 7 years. During law school at SMU, I lived over at Forest and Greenville. Now I'm at Bryan Place to be a little bit closer to downtown where I work. And for me, it's really important that we have leadership that has a track record of being involved in our community and being involved in this organization. For me, it was really easy because when I was looking around and specifically around the pandemic, this organization was still rocking and rolling. And so I just thought it was really great to see an organization just so enriched in the community, and even during a pandemic, it didn't stop it. And so I know that's major kudos to Brian and the rest of the board. In case some of you don't know a little bit about me, I'm the first attorney in my family. I'm from Bogota, Colombia, and I came here when I was 4 with my 2 older sisters. My family fled violence, and my mother needed a surgery to remove a brain tumor. One of the few places that could do it happened to be in Houston, Texas. So we moved to Houston. My mother recovered. I grew up in Katy, Texas. It's where I went to public school. It's where I learned English. That's why I'm a big supporter of our public schools, because I stand on the foundation of a really great public school. And unfortunately, in middle school, my visa expired, so I grew up undocumented for the majority of my young adult life. My parents were really big about education, hard work, and giving back because a lot of people helped us growing up. Graduated top of my class, went to UT Arlington, then SMU Law School. My dad remarried, and it was my stepmom who sponsored my citizenship, so I became a citizen in 2013. That was the same year I graduated from law school. I went on to practice as a prosecutor for the past 8 years, prosecuted major felony crimes, cleared the backlog of the rape kits. I was in the sex assault unit for 2 years and served as a legislative liaison for the district attorney. So I've actually gone down to session in 2019, so I have the experience needed. I helped reps and senators write and pass criminal justice reform bills. You know, I think for me, sometimes we get lost in the whole political spiel. But what I really want to emphasize is that this district is looking for a leader that they know, that they trust, that has been in the community, and that they can relate to. Really, when it comes down to it, my parents brought me to this country because they believed in what this country stood for. It was hope for them, it was prosperity, but it was also equality and inclusion. And I think those principles are really being tested today. I think when it comes to equality and when it comes to inclusion, we saw that being tested with the Ketanji Brown confirmation hearings. When we saw a woman and a woman of color who was clearly overqualified for her position, and yet she was being tested on those principles of equality and inclusion. And we see that in just about every industry. And at the end of the day, this community is 54% communities of color. And they are looking for someone who they can relate to in life experiences, who they are looking to, who they know have put the blood, sweat, and tears into the community, and that they can trust when that person has a seat at the table, they will make a decision that's in their best interest. And so I hope that my track record can speak for itself. I hope that my life experiences can speak for themselves. And I hope that my professional experiences and all those combined can earn your trust and support. And so I appreciate your time. I have an event at 11, so I'll have to sneak out, but I appreciate everyone's time and all the work that all of y'all do. So thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you. Other candidates in the room? I'm actually running for city council, but I'm going to defer to one of our guest dignitaries, an actually elected official. Teresa Daniel, would you want to come up just to say words to this? And then just speak up and talk to the camera there. So do you have people in Zoom?
And good morning, Lake Highlands, White Rock Democrats. I always thought it was White Rock, Lake Highlands Democrats, but that's a minor point. Because I was there in the very beginning in like 1992 when this group started, when there were no Democrats in this part of the world, until we started putting out yard signs and they started popping up. Because people realize that, yes, we are not alone. There are people who agree and think similarly as a lot of us do about education, about healthcare, about transportation, about quality of life, about equity, about you name it. I want to talk just a minute about elections, since if we're coming up, obviously, in May, there are 2 elections, one partisan, one nonpartisan. And then with possible runoffs like in June. So there's a number of elections coming up. Dallas County, as in all county governments, essentially run the elections for the county, and we contract with the school districts and councils and the Dallas College and the variety of entities that provide district representation. Right now, we have been going back and forth on the location of voting places. With the advent of voting centers, it's changed in significance because you can vote anywhere in any of the voting locations for both early vote and day of election. And so some people say, well, why do we have to have 469 voting locations? Because they are no longer tied to the geographical precinct. I understand. You will see that I am one of the people speaking up to say it is still access. that makes the difference in who actually gets out to vote. And so there are a number of places where there are two voting locations that may be around the corner from each other. They may be, 8 blocks from each other, they're close by. And so, yes, we must do an evaluation of some of those situations. I looked at all of the very specific locations that were being targeted for, they call them deletion. Well, I hated to use that term. It's more the consolidation, because those voters have to go to the next closest place or to another place. And went through them all, and if there were barriers, if there were major streets to cross, I said, no, we're going to keep these until we do that major overhaul and really dig into, where's voter turnout? How is it impacting people? What about people with wheelchairs? I mean, there's a variety of issues that I think we must look at. I wear this necklace that says vote because I am so tired of the state telling, in particular, Dallas County has been targeted about all the things that we cannot do. I really resent that because by statute, we must run fair, accessible elections for all, for everybody. Not just those who have cars, not just those who can get out between 8 and 5, or et cetera, et cetera. If you have thoughts, concerns, ideas, I'm always willing to listen. We're going into a period, the next probably 18 months, where we really will be evaluating where are our voting locations and what are the ideas, what are the details that we want to keep in mind. It's always been such a pleasure to come here. It's been a long time. I mean, a long time that I've been coming. But these are the good things that we do come together. We talk about things and learn things, listen, and so it's always very much appreciated. And it's with great pride that I think I've been trying to represent this area for a long time. Anyway, thank you for your indulgence. Let's go vote.
We have a candidate that ran for office in U.S. District 5, Dr. Carolyn Salter. Let's give it up for our candidate. In the hallway, did I see Sheriff Lupe Valdez?
Yes, you got straight in the bathroom.
So we have a former gubernatorial candidate from the state of Texas. So let's give her a shout out before, do we have other candidates that would like to speak? I'll give a quick 1 minute on myself. Brian Hasenbauer, I am running for city council for Dallas, Lake Highlands, District 10. The election is May of 2023, so I'm getting out of the gate fast, trying to get that early lead. So if you know people that want to vote for a progressive to join city council, I'd like to be that person. The current councilman is Councilman Adam Magoo, who I served with for 3 terms as his community development commissioner. We work well together. I appreciate a lot of the things he's done, especially his collective impact, where he brings together community leaders and we figure out what the needs of the community are, and we spread out and try to get the work done. So I think that's very valuable, having citizen input and being able to make sure that city government is doing what you need it to do. So I think that as we see our DCAD appraisals coming out, did anyone check those recently? Because I've been hearing a lot of people saying that even though some of the rates are capped, they're still going up. So people are going to be paying more taxes. I'm not against paying taxes, but what I am against is paying taxes to governments that don't be good stewards of the money. So we need government that's accountable, transparent, effective, and efficient. And I know with 311 calls, if you call the city, and right now they're going through a revamp of 311, so it takes 20 to 30 minutes to get through for a 311 call, which is unacceptable. We need government that's more accountable for that. We need to know that if we make a 311 complaint, or even more importantly, a 911 complaint, that is answered promptly, quickly, in a professional manner, and and we get the benefits of living in the city of Dallas, because we need to compete with the cities of Frisco and Richardson and the other cities around us. Because as more people move to Dallas, which is the #1 place people are moving in the United States right now, it's true in the DFW area, we need to compete because we need to have better library services. We need to have longer hours. We need to have better programs, better after-school care for our children that the city of Dallas funds. We also need to be using our other monies and pooling with other communities around the DFW area to pull those people in. So that's why I'm running, because I want to see some of Dallas's problems solved. I like to say they're not Republican or Democratic problems, they're Dallas's problems. So let's work together, make Dallas a more accountable, effective, transparent, and efficient government. And Brian for Dallas, Brian #4dallas.org, and I'm running for city council. So thank you. Now we're gonna sit down and change roles here. I'm gonna change into the vice president of the club, and we're gonna talk about sustainability. Oh, thank you. And I'm looking at my phone because I'm admitting people to the topic in the Zoom, and I do have my questions on here. So what we're here to talk about, it is Earth Month, and we want to talk about sustainability and what's happening in the city of Dallas. And if you're like me, even though you're involved in sustainability, there's a lot of questions. You know, what is the city of Dallas doing about solar panels and air quality, pollution in our lakes and rivers and recycling? A lot of questions. So we've got some experts today that can kind of talk about the topic and get into some of the details. And the reason why it's important that we talk about this, you know, I go back to when Al Gore lost the election to George W. Bush. And if you remember Al Gore, his thing was the environment, even back then. So if we look at 20 years ago, if Al Gore was president, I mean, he invented the internet. He would have started with climate change. He would have been focused on that. And so we would have had a 20-year head start if we would have had that happen, but it didn't. So now we're kind of in the point where we're starting to see things happen, like billion-dollar storms have increased. How many tornadoes have we had in Dallas that have been billion-dollar tornadoes? Billion-dollar windstorms in Lake Highlands. It wasn't a tornado, but there was so much damage to infrastructure and trees that it seemed like a tornado came through. We have flooding. We have cities that are underwater. New Orleans won't be there in 10 years.
Right.
Miami, you can actually pay less for waterfront property now than you do for property in land because it's not going to be there. So a lot of these things are mitigated, and I'm sorry I'm painting the negative picture, but it is a big challenge. So I think we've come to the point in the city of Dallas, which is the 9th largest city in America, that we've made the commitment monetarily by passing CECAP, which Kathryn and Paula will talk about, but we're making commitments. So the question that I like to pose as an overall question is, are we doing enough? And what can we do more? And what are we doing well? Because we do want a silver lining. We do want to see some of the things that are successful as we go through this conversation. So that's why we're here. And I am going to introduce our 2 speakers. We have Paula Day on the call, and we also have Kathryn Bazan. And Kathryn, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. And I'm going to say, I told you I wasn't going to introduce you, but I'm going to introduce you a little bit. So, you know, running for city council, one of your jobs basically is just to watch city council meetings and also committee meetings and commissions. And Kathryn chairs the newly formed Environmental Commission, which does a lot of important work. And I've seen a lot of commission meetings and a lot of city meetings, and I think that, you know, to your compliment, you run some of the best meetings, most effective, and you cover everything in such detail that, you know, very good to see that with the chair.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
On that note, Kathryn, tell us about yourself.
Yes, and if you've ever watched one of our meetings, you'll know that that's true because they are not shorter than 3.5 hours long. So we have a 2-hour time, luckily. But there is a lot to cover. So I'm Kathryn Bazan. I'm the chair of the newly formed Dallas Environmental Commission. My background includes implementing environmental policy at the municipal level. And I've also worked for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, where I did regulatory compliance assistance. So I was trained in air, water, and waste, and we would go out and we would ensure that industrial facilities or operators were in compliance with every aspect of their reporting, their permits, their operations, et cetera. I left that and sort of found my calling to serve our community in 2020, when, as you might remember, we had a proposed concrete batch plant come into the Zaca Junction area. And so my neighbors and I formed a community group called East Dallas Greater Good, and we are now a 2,000 member community action group that champions quality of life issues for the neighborhood. So I'm also a member of the Dallas Sierra Club. I serve on the Eco Action and Conservation Committee and also on the executive committee. And I'm a Texas Master Naturalist, and I am sort of spearheading the replanting effort at the Old Fish Hatchery at White Rock Lake, as you guys might recall, it was clear cut. And so we have done some replantings there. And I also live in East Dallas. I live in Eastwood with my husband and 2 children.
Great. Well, let's welcome Kathryn. And Paula, can you hear us?
Yep, I can. Can you hear me?
Everyone good? Can you hear okay? Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm Paula Day. I have to say it's a tough act to follow Kathryn's introduction, but I'm very excited to be here. I wish I could have been with you in person today, but I was traveling for Easter. I too am a resident of East Dallas. I've lived in Munger Place for over, I think 12 years, in Dallas for almost 30. I work in marketing and communications for a consulting firm. I'm very excited to represent District 14 on the Environmental Commission. I am an active member of the Climate Reality Leadership Corps, which Brian mentioned, former Vice President Al Gore. That was the organization that he founded. And I've been a member of the DFW chapter for several years. And through this organization, I was really able to get training and education on many of the topics that we cover when we're looking at issues covered by the CECAP and the discussions that we have on the Environmental Commission. So I'm really thankful to be part of that organization, and which really focuses on grassroots activism and public advocacy. I'm also a member of the Funky East Dallas Democrats, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about CECAP and what we're doing in the city of Dallas.
Great. Thank you, Paula. When we were putting this together, I thought of who I thought would best represent the city of Dallas, and these 2 people came to mind. I know Paula from Climate Reality. I actually wear my Climate Reality leadership pin proudly. I did go through the training, and I'm very excited about what Climate Reality stands for. I led the plastics group for a year or so to try to, get plastics out of our system and try to get a bottle refund in Texas and some other initiatives. And that's actually how we met. Kathryn showed up for one of our cleanups at Fishback Lake in West Dallas. And we were out there cleaning up the lake, doing some good work. And she let me know she was heading up this new commission, so we thought it would be a good idea to have her here. So the first question, I know we've talked about CECAP already a few times. What is CECAP? I know that some people know, but it's very confusing what it is. I forget the acronym most of the time. So tell us, Kathryn, about what CECAP is and what the different components are.
So the CECAP is the city's comprehensive environmental and climate action plan. And essentially what it is it's our roadmap. It tells us exactly how we are going to get to a reduction of emissions. It outlines every target and measure, and then we have annual work plans that help us keep that accountability. And so the CECAP is not just about reducing emissions. It is about equity. It is about quality of life. As we know, the quality of life is not the same in all communities in our city, and especially the environmental quality. And so the CECAP is accountability.
Okay. And to follow up on that a little bit, it's trying to be interwoven in all the other city policies of Dallas. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
because when I was advocating for it as a member of Climate Reality, I remember one of the things that I was pushing for was more EV charging stations, and then also the housing policy. So Dallas has a housing policy, but it doesn't include some of the things that are in CECAP yet, such as when you build a new house or multifamily, you actually have to have EV hookups built in, or the based on how many parking spots you have. You have to have new residential units have to be able to have how do you say that? Photovoltaic on the roof, so you can have solar panels if you choose to. So it's big. It's a lot of things. So very comprehensive, which is the whole point of it. One of the things we say in Dallas is we have these great plans and then we stick them on the shelf. That's something we hear a lot. So that's kind of why we have a great commission led by commissioners that can kind of help keep it off the shelf. So Paula, how has it been serving on the commission, and how do we keep track of these goals and measurements? And how do we keep, the city government accountable to the plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one really important element is that the plan is overseen by the Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability, but many of the departments feed into it. So they would have as part of their plans things that relate to CECAP. So an example would be, solid waste management. So I think you're gonna have a question for us about bulky and organic trash. And so, that's just an example of, a very something that you can measure. How is this going to work? So this is like an example of something from another city department that's part of the plan. So overall, there are 8 focus areas, and it's a 30-year plan. So there are 97 actions that were created. So, as you said, it's not meant to be a pretty plan that sits on a shelf, as Susan Alvarez says. It's meant to be, something that you can, really tick off. This is what we are doing. So within the first year, they have activated 73 of the actions. So there's quite a lot in progress. They have a really, huge number of milestones that fit underneath that. So the city is able to, track their progress on this, and city residents can actually go to the website, and it's called Dallas Climate Action, and you can find the plan. It's broken down in a really easy to navigate way. So you'll see the 8 different areas that are covered, which I'll just tick through them kind of quickly. It's, buildings, what are we doing to make them energy efficient? Energy, how are we, managing renewable and reliable sources of energy? Transportation, not just cars. How can we manage all forms of, friendly transportation that will reduce our emissions? Zero waste, which I know we're going to cover. Water, reliable, clean water supply. Green spaces, air quality, and food. So those are the 8. So you can go to the website, you can, look at the plan, you can see the milestones. And, one of our roles in the Environmental Commission is to have people reach out to us. So, we would definitely welcome people viewing the plan, saying, I'd like to find out more about this. What is the city doing about this? Where does this fit? How are we making progress towards that? So it is, measurable, and the OEQS will be reporting on it regularly to the stakeholder groups.
Great. So we're tracking it. We're keeping on track. We do have the 8 different areas. So Paula kind of introduced one of the areas I wanted to dig into a little bit. And that is Dallas's Zero Waste Initiative. So that's kind of one of the things that Paula alluded to, that, it's a city department that has a goal, but it does tie into CECAP. So what exactly does zero waste mean, Kathryn?
It is when we are able to divert from our waste stream every sort of component that we would just throw away, right? And so that includes recyclables. It includes our, as Paula said, the brush and bulky items that we set out monthly. And so becoming, zero waste is really finding another use for all of the things that we purchase, or not purchasing things that we don't need.
Okay. So I know that there's a pilot going on. Is that the main thing we're trying to do, with separating compostables to landfill items?
So the pilot has concluded. There were 6 neighborhoods that underwent a brush separation, essentially was what it was, pilot. And so what the city was trying to understand is if they pick up brush and bulky material less frequently, so the pilot was a pickup quarterly instead of monthly. And if we take all of that organic material that we're setting out and instead of sending it to the landfill, we divert it and reuse it in some way. And that organic material is not taking up space in our landfill, but also perhaps it can be utilized for something else as well.
Yeah, a great example of that is if you think about Dallas Zoo. They have a requirement for a lot of brush and a lot of leaves. So, leaves that are still good, the elephants, the other animals can eat them as needed, even some of the wood. Or I know that a lot of neighbors have said they want to actually chip some of the wood and then give it back to parks or have pickups. Is that kind of part of the zero waste thoughts?
Yes, and I think that they're really exploring all of the different options. So that now that the pilot has concluded, that I think that the commission is going to be briefed on some of the results and what those recommendations might be to implement it on a larger scale.
So yeah, that's kind of a big deal. Is taking that brush that would be sent to a landfill. I know we do need organic material in the landfill to break down and all that, but to have a lot of it go somewhere else and be reused is very good. Yeah, we have a question.
Yeah, I wanted to, there's a lot of environmental stuff, obviously, and you can kind of, but my concern is, I live in Lake Highlands. I have a little canoe or kayak in White Rock Lake. And one of the issues is the amount of plastics that flow down White Rock Creek. And then anytime there's any kind of major rain now, because, it's all just flushing down and it ends up in White Rock. And I'm looking to see what the city can do plastic. Obviously you want to get rid of single-use plastics, but I don't think that's realistic in the short term. But you gotta do a plastic capture system somewhere along White Rock Creek where it doesn't end up in the lake. And you just go walking down White Rock Creek, it's a mess. You have plastic bags, and you can try to at least get rid of the plastic bags.
I promise I did not pay him to say that. Because I'm thinking the same thing. That's my passion.
And it's citywide, and there's a lot of nice places in Dallas. And I've been even, during the pandemic, you get walking in the city, and you notice south of 30, there's a lot of trash. And there's, the homeless is an issue. You've got the dumpers. You got, then 10% of the people just don't care and just throw the trash in. But you got to do something to eliminate single-use plastics. Get rid of the plastic bags, plastic straws, and then you got to come up with a strategy to engineer a plastic capture system somewhere along White Rock Creek. And that's that. Until that's done, and I noticed the city water supply, whatever, the Dallas Water has engineered. If you go behind, I don't know if you know Emmett Conrad High School. And you go behind there, it's a mess with just plastics. And there used to be a pond out there. And the city looked at restoring the pond at $8 million, or just filling it in and said plastic doesn't capture there, but it's just going to flow down to the lake. So
is there a question in that?
Yeah, I want the city to engineer a plastic capture system.
Okay.
Somewhere along White Rock Creek so it doesn't flow into the lake. And I know that's a big issue, but it's got to be done. They had an engineering report done.
I think it's great that he's so passionate about this, because that's my passion too.
I didn't even know it was the Democrats.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to visit the environment.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead, Kathryn.
So you can see the plastic, but imagine what you cannot see that is running off into our stormwater, into our creeks, and into our lakes, right? I know that this past week, the city did install a trash boom at White Rock Lake, and that was a request that was done out of the visible litter. What it is an educational campaign, because everything that we're putting on our lawns, everything that we have on our property when it rains and runs off goes into the creeks and into the channels. And every single thing that runs off has an impact, whether it's sediment, whether it's lawn products, whether it's herbicide or pesticide or any other sort of petrochemical. All of those things end up in our waterways. And so it really is going to take a massive educational outreach campaign on the city's behalf to help people understand that no, it's not a drinking water source, but we do use a lot of our water bodies in our city for recreational sources, recreational places. And you're absolutely right. The plastic issue is not a Dallas issue. That is a global issue. And the single-use plastic, ultimately does contribute to microplastics and the presence of those in our lakes and oceans. And so, yes, we have to change our behavior, right?
Have you asked any for PFAs around the city based on like different neighborhoods to see if there's any sort of economic distribution? You understand what I'm saying?
Sure, yeah. No, I don't think that they're currently.
Well, she doesn't understand, but you want to explain explain to her what PFAs are. They're forever chemicals.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
so I think they're perfluorocarbon.
I can't remember.
Yeah, so
They're bad. They're
Yeah.
bad. They're very bad.
They are, yes, they're chemicals that last a very long time and have a tremendous ability to negatively impact the environment. And so, do you have a question? Oh, okay, so sorry. And so I don't know that we're actively studying, different chemicals across the city. I do know that there are sites that are known contamination sites for that type of chemical, such as Highlands Field, where the city is currently undergoing the remediation effort with the Navy. Yes.
I got her late, so you may have already answered this. Do the single-use plastic manufacturers put in any amount to help with any of this?
No.
So that's a great question.
So
You know,
why aren't they?
So let's talk a little bit about the plastic bottles and plastic bags and the extended manufacturer type of repercussions. So like in the city of Dallas, one of the problems with plastics is that we did pass a plastic bag ban or fee years ago, and the money would go into a beautification fund. We'd be able to use that to clean the rivers, all that stuff. But then in Austin, there's a preemption rule where municipalities can't pass laws that impact the state and so forth. So anyway, that got taken down. So one of the things that has been talked about is saying, okay, well, if you sell plastic bags or give plastic bags out, you need to have the ability to take those plastic bags back and get those back to a recycling.
Or pay the city for the cleanup mess.
Or something like that. And so similar with plastic bottles, I know there's been a national campaign in Texas to have a plastic bottle rebate where you could take those bottles back to the store that you bought them at, stick them in a machine and get your 5 cents back. But in the city of Dallas, they can't mandate that at this point. So there are some things that trying to get manufacturers to have to take their stuff back is something that we could do.
Is the city of Dallas doing anything though with plastic capture down White Rock Creek, except that boom, I guess you just put it in? Are they trying to capture all of it?
I'll find out for you.
And let's talk about recycling a little bit, because I know that's one of our topics, and in my mind, it all ties together. So if we can get those plastic bottles and aluminum cans and so forth into a recycling stream, they won't end up in our streams. So what is the status? I know multifamily recycling has been touted as something Dallas is doing great on. We've implemented that. How does that work? And
Yeah.
how's that work?
We do have a brand new, it was implemented in the beginning of 2020, multifamily recycling. And so prior to that, it wasn't required or offered. So now it is required. Any multifamily apartment that has more than 8 apartments is required to offer and collect recycling, which is big. There were several properties that initially thought that they would need an exemption based on just different criteria. OEQS and the city went out That's the Office of Environmental Quality and Sustainability. They went out, they worked with them, and to date, no one has been granted an exemption from the multifamily recycling. And so, we are, one of the CECAP goals is obviously towards reducing the amount of things that go into our landfill. And so we are watching, how much waste is going to be diverted, how effective is this new program, but it has challenges like any program does. And a lot of it is education. A lot of it is contamination of the recycling materials. A lot of it is just people don't know what they can and can't recycle. And so getting the information out about what's a good, there's a Instagram profile that I follow that is so good from the city of Dallas, and it will, share tidbits of information, and I'll share that here in a minute with some other resources that I have about what you can and can't recycle. Did you know that you can't recycle anything smaller than a Post-it note? Did you know that you can't recycle Easter grass or Easter, materials and things like that, those plastic bags? So there are certain things that are helpful, the education, and just getting the word out about what our recycling program can do if it's effectively implemented.
How much confidence should we have when we put something into a recycling and it's actually going to get recycled?
Well, if it meets all of the program criteria, you should be very confident because it goes to the sorting facility and it is processed for recycling. If it doesn't, if it's contaminated or if you placed it into a bag, or if it doesn't meet the criteria, obviously, then they would pull that.
And as I read stories about how this goes to China and it's more expensive to recycle than it is to get rid of it, you're just getting rid of it. It's not actually getting recycled.
Yeah, I know that's a fear that we all have. One point as we talk about getting the word out. So Dallas is a single source recycling community. So that means you just take paper, plastics, aluminum, bottles, just put them in your bin. You don't have to bag them. I know we did a tour on Climate Reality of the recycling plant. And if you have a bag that comes in, the reason why they do kind of like the clear blue bags is because they know that that's probably recycling. So they're not just going to throw it away. They're going to rip it up and dump it out on the conveyor belt and then throw the bag away. But if it's a black trash bag, that's going straight to the landfill. So things like that, some education. And one of the things that I know that some of the citizens have been advocating for is a larger budget to do this communication, because they have a budget that focuses mostly on doing the work, not getting the word out. So I know CECAP could use a lot more public attention, media, PSAs and things like that about how to do it properly. I'd like to work Paula into this a little bit because we talked about multifamily recycling. And just one moment. Roger Knudsen, who's the former head of the Climate Reality, would say this a lot to me, and Paula, I want to get your impression on this, is he would say, Brian, your individual actions are wonderful and admirable, but they don't amount to a hell of a lot. And that's hard to hear. When someone says you recycling, at your own house is important, but multifamily is more people than single family homes, and also commercial recycling. Think about bars and restaurants, how many cans and bottles and plastics and solo cups that they're just throwing away. They have no incentive, they have no reason to recycle. So that's a kind of loaded question, Paula. But we did want to talk about commercial recycling.
Yep.
In Dallas, and what does that even mean, or is it even a thing?
Yeah, so it's definitely on the radar screen. I think there's a lot of opportunity. And what I've learned with my short time with the city is the city prefers a carrot versus a stick approach. We may get to the point where we need more of the stick, but right now we're still looking at more of voluntary efforts. So there's a green business certification program. Quite a small number of businesses are part of this, only 16 so far. So that's an opportunity where I think if the city, if the plan is properly funded and staffed, then there would be more outreach to businesses to make sure that they knew about this and the incentives that would come from this. So, currently there's just issues around, the number of waste haulers that serve businesses and how the city could get reporting on, the amount of material that's out there. So, that's something that they have to take into effect. But there is, a plan for a phased requirement, mandatory commercial program. So I think that's something that we'll be able to talk more about in the future. It also would start with incentivizing the waste haulers by giving them, they'd be some kind of part of some kind of credit system for doing single stream recycling. So it is, I think, an enormous opportunity. And, kind of back to the point that you mentioned about Roger, does it, are we all just, kind of small cogs out here doing our little bit? I think when you really get to something like commercial recycling, that's what maybe makes people kind of see the amount that could be diverted. It also might help people think about not using it in the first place. So I think that would be a big visibility point for the city to really step up the game on commercial recycling.
Great, thank you, Paula. And Erica, you were polite with the.
Well, Kathryn, I'm Erica Hall. I think
We're friends.
you know me.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, first of all, for helping us with the lake lady, which is super fun EPA site. And if you looked at if you can tell us a map that shows all these chemical spots that EPA is targeted, but I'm not sure EPA is that interested. From what we've been going through for the last 3 years, I didn't know that lane plating will never be useful again. And there's other areas of Dallas that are so polluted, the groundwater, the streams going up and down Dallas, and we don't talk about that. We don't talk about what we're doing. And I want to thank you for being a big part of keeping that concrete plant out of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
So, seriously. And could you tell us, do you know where I've seen that map before that shows all these areas. I know Mountain Creek Lake, it's not possible to probably ever use that again, and it's still happening. Can you give us some, I'm terrified.
Well, the city has numerous Superfund sites, and so the Environmental Protection Agency has designated sites where we know chemicals of concern are present and need to be remediated. Lane Plating Works is a former, very small business electroplater in Southern Dallas, and the facility is contaminated. They're working on a remediation plan now. But essentially what happened was there was a sump underneath the property. They were dumping electroplating materials into the sump. The sump corroded. It leaked into the groundwater underneath the property, and the soil and the groundwater are both contaminated. With Hensley Field, which is at Mountain Creek Lake, they are working on a plan to remediate that and repurpose that. And one of our most recent commission meetings was the entire plan to redevelop that site into essentially a green space with both commercial and residential uses. And then there are some other known EPA Superfund sites. We've got the RSR site in West Dallas. There's a new EPA site, and it's not new, but they are doing some new assessments of a former EPA Superfund site in West Dallas where the Texas vermiculite site with asbestos contamination was located. And so, yes, it is daunting and it is concerning to have those chemicals present, especially when you have residential proximity very close to a lot of these locations. But understanding what the contamination extent is and then coming up with a plan to remediate it. And what we can do is ensure that it is remediated to the levels that we as a community are comfortable with, because there are different levels of remediation.
They don't even know they're in the backyard.
Right.
The neighbors in our committee, which is a little ragtag group of people, have forced kind of EPA to look over that area and to warn the neighbors of the potential where the most likely
illnesses from diabetes to kidney to brain stuff. And we haven't even told those neighbors. And it's finally getting to that point. But thank you. She just looked up. What was it?
It was a TCEQ supervisor.
So we heard earlier from a gentleman who I think had a question guised in saying, hey, we have plastics in our streams and it's visible. We can see it, we know we have a problem. And Kathryn, you pointed out that there's a lot of things that aren't seen in our streams that are a problem. So air quality is a whole nother topic. So we talked about streams and we can see the pollutants. You know, if you have asthma, if you have CPOD, if you have other breathing problems, you're going to be affected by the air quality changes within the city of Dallas on a daily basis based on ozone alerts and so forth. So I know batch plants are kind of one of the things that you have kind of tried to really advocate strongly against. Can you just tell us a little bit about batch plants and air quality and kind of how all that ties together and what you do on the commission?
Sure. So as a community advocate, as I mentioned, one of the first big projects that got my attention in this area was a concrete batch plant within our residential community. I won't mince any words. We need concrete. We have regional mobility plans. We have developments. We have roadways to repair. We absolutely have to have concrete, but they don't have to be located in our residential neighborhoods. And so one of the things that I have championed are reforms to concrete batch plant policies in the city of Dallas. And so sort of working with the city, working with Councilwoman Blackman, who is also the chair of the Environment and Sustainability Committee, we have been able to do several things. The first are internal policies within the city of Dallas. When the city of Dallas is notified that a concrete batch plant is going to come into a community, the first thing they do now is they notify the council person, they notify the environmental commissioner, and I think they're notifying the city plan commissioner so that we can begin to reach out to our communities and let you know. We're also working on ways that communities can give feedback about batch plant issues in their neighborhoods. Concrete batch plants are dirty, they're dusty, there are many sources of air pollution, air emissions that come from a concrete batch plant. So essentially, as you may know, they have different materials. They have aggregates, they have concrete or cement, and they have water, and they mix them all in a truck, and then it spins. They have about 45 minutes to dump that concrete once it has been batched. So the location is really key for these concrete batch plant operators. In order for them to make money, they have to be located pretty close to the project where they want to dump concrete. And so what we have been able to do is we have city staff briefed the commission that we're changing the ordinance. We're changing the city ordinance and the zoning code that will do several things. Currently, concrete batch plants are allowed in every zoning district across the city, including residential. Temporary batch plants that are in support of public works projects don't have to notify the public at all, not through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality and not through the city. So concrete batch plants have to get a permit through the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, which is totally separate from any permits that they have to get with the city of Dallas. So they will go, they'll make their application, they'll get their permit, they'll buy a piece of property, they'll set up shop, and if it's allowed by the zoning code, they're allowed to operate there, no matter how close they may be to a residential property. There are no distance requirements. And so that's concerning to me, that a concrete batch plant could be located 100 feet, 200 feet from a residential property. And so the zoning code revision will do three things. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to allow city staff to vet the appropriateness of that industrial use. And so they will look at area land use plans. They will look at compatibility. They will look at design standards, which include fencing, screening, buffers, stockpile heights, etc. The next thing that we get that we've never gotten before is a public hearing. It is so hard to get a public hearing with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality on a concrete batch plant. And even when you get a public hearing, you are unable to successfully request the denial of a permit unless you can prove it doesn't meet the permit criteria. Because if the TCEQ finds that it's going to meet the permit criteria, they're legally obligated to grant that permit. And so what the city can do is we get a hearing at the city plan commission, and our very capable city plan commissioners get the opportunity to vet that project for its compatibility in the neighborhood, for an evaluation of what is this concrete batch plant's impact to the surrounding land use is going to be. And then we get another public hearing at city council. And so this new process, which will require a specific use permit, has unanimously passed the zoning ordinance advisory committee. It has unanimously passed city plan commission and will come up to the city council in the month of May. And so if you are in favor of reforming the concrete batch plant zoning code, your voice should be heard, because there are parts of Dallas, and East Dallas doesn't get a concrete batch plant application very often. We're very fortunate. There are parts of Dallas who week after week after week get a new concrete batch plant application, and they're located next to schools. They're located next to homes. They're located, quite frankly, just where they have no business being located. Industrial encroachment into residential neighborhoods happens in West and Southern Dallas far more frequently than it happens in North and East Dallas. And, you know, we talk about environmental equity, and that is one of my biggest issues with concrete batch plant encroachment. And so ensuring that our residents have clean air at the neighborhood level is part of the comprehensive environment and climate action plan, the CECAP. Ensuring good air quality. But when you have children who in our region are more impacted by asthma than nationally, the DFW region has higher asthma rates than the state or the national rates, and they far exceed, not just a little, they far exceed. 3 times. And so the DFW region leads the area for childhood pediatric hospitalizations due to asthma. And the leading cause of absenteeism in DISD is respiratory related issues. So we're talking about really making zoning code revisions that are going to directly help and support air quality for our residents. And that's major.
There's a point coming up about this, and that's the lack of notice.
Yes.
Because that batch plant, that neighborhood group was very instrumental in stopping on Garland Road, moved across into Garland. Nobody received any notice at all, and it came up within 2 weeks after the vote in the city of Dallas. So I am committed as a county person with 26 cities in the county, petitioning, making the state aware of notice requirements, or at least to, you know, talk to us about these things, and of hearing requirements, because none of that stuff is in there. And so I'm committed to working with other members, because none of this stuff recognizes boundaries.
Right.
It's a regional water entity authority that controls water in our area.
Right.
Because water, air, roads, I mean, they go across boundaries.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we've got to figure out how we can be more effective in working with the state, where so many of the regulations come out of, and with the feds, with their lack of oversight or anything else. But then I'm committed as a Dallas County Commissioner to say, let's get together and do something about at least some of those points that we can for information purposes.
So for those on Zoom, that was our County Commissioner Teresa Daniel. Just so you heard that voice, that was who that was. So yes, I love what you just said about how air and water, we all share it. So what happens in one county comes over to Dallas and so forth. So we're all in this together, which is why it's important for all of us. So I want to bring Paula back in here because we kind of need to keep going through some topics. So when we talk about air quality, we know that one of the major sources of pollution are the things we drive, unless you're riding a bike everywhere. But fossil fuel powered automobiles, and also the coal that we use to fire up our heaters and what we use for energy. So renewables, that's kind of a big area of CECAP, and solar is a big part of that. So Paula, can you just tell us a little bit about what the city of Dallas, kind of what the different components of solar are and how the city of Dallas is trying to approach that?
Yeah, so again, kind of similar to what we talked about with recycling, the jurisdiction would start with city-owned buildings. So that's where you can see the first kind of tranche of progress. So just this last week, the city added 3 new solar sites for city-owned buildings. So there were 9 before that, but this doubled the solar capacity for city-owned buildings. So that's great progress. The next big project that the city will be working on is looking for an appropriate location for a city-owned solar farm. Some of you may have seen news last week, I think, about Farmers Branch adding a solar farm as part of their landfill location. So they're bringing solar in a big way, and that's something that the city of Dallas wants to do as well. So there's also in terms of like single-family homes. The housing department has made this part of their affordable housing project. So to date, 6 single family homes have taken advantage of this program. So it's a very small scale in terms of that, single family homes, but that needs to ramp up. But I think the biggest opportunity, or a very big opportunity in addition to the solar farm, is looking at what can be done on the proposed city convention facility. So building a brand new facility, which really is, the clean slate approach to having the opportunity to bring lots of green features into it. You can imagine, facility the size of K. Bailey Hutchinson, the amount of energy that's consumed by a building of that size. So being able to start from scratch with green building principles for the new convention center will be fantastic. Of course, the biggest opportunity is rooftop solar, but lots of other features that can be built into it. So I think that's the approach that Dallas is taking, is looking out there for all the opportunities. We just had a presentation from our solar technical panel member about how the opportunities for the what we call the big box stores, which are all over the area. They have big flat roofs that would be perfect for solar. So how can the city reach out to these owners and talk to them about the benefits that would come from them putting solar on their facilities. So it is a huge opportunity, and I think CECAP is definitely looking for all ways to push that forward.
Yeah, and that's a great point, that the city does own a lot of facilities. And I know that when they built the Vickery Meadow Library, which is kind of near Lake Highlands, that they did add solar panels. And so I believe most of the power that powers the library comes from its own solar panels. So Paula, in terms of like taking an inventory of all the Dallas facilities, how many are like set to be retrofitted with solar, or are we just going with the let's put solar on when we build new ones? What's the approach there?
Yeah, I actually don't have figures on the current inventory, but I know based on the fact that there are only 12 sites, well, 9 current and 3 have just been added. That tells you that there's plenty of opportunity out there. But I don't have figures on that. But it is something that the city is looking into, the green development, working into the building code, that there'll be more opportunities to work with the, I'm not sure of there are a lot of different organizations that certify in solar, so I'm not quite sure where this comes, but it is something the Development Code Office would be looking at too, how we can make this an easier process, and working with pre-wiring for solar, and the same with EV.
Okay, great. So the city of Dallas seems to be moving in that direction of building requirements, and like we said before, it's comprehensive, so it's working its way into all these policies. So what about like, EVs are very popular, everyone thinks we should be driving electric vehicles. But where do we get those charged, and what role does the city have to play? Can we just tell all the gas stations and all the bookstores and places where people dwell for 30 minutes if they have to have them? Or how does that work? Tell us about EV.
I think that a lot of people are thinking about this because of the price of gasoline, right? But it's actually been part of the CECAP's goal to install 1,500 EV chargers. And so we, can't require them on private property, but there's, like Paula mentioned, the carrot versus the stick. And so North Central Texas Council of Governments estimates that we have about 1,100 EV stations in the city of Dallas. We install 50 to 100 a year, depending on funding that we can get through different, funding mechanisms like the VW settlement or TERP, Texas Emission Reduction Plan funding that comes up. And so we are definitely looking forward in our policies on how we can incorporate electric vehicle charging stations. I know that part of the specific use permit process now includes the incentive to install an EV charger or an EV charging station. So we're comprehensively looking at ways that we can sort of incorporate the different facilities. And I know that DART is actually looking to the ability to start installing them at their stations. So
That's a perfect use case because you're parked there for a specific period of time, get your car charged up, go back home.
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing that I know with EVs, which are really cool, is you can actually plug them in and sell your power back to the electric grid, which would be a big thing in the city of Dallas when our grid's not exactly reliable based on our Texas legislature. Not to opinionate on that, but you can power your own house when your power goes out, because Greg Abbott knocked it out. I don't want to get too into that right now. So we're about at our time for this, but I know everyone's passionate about this, and there's a few people that didn't get a chance to ask a question. So let's go ahead and open the floor for questions, and try to have a question, not an opinion.
Well, kind of what this guy was going to ask
Sure.
about commercial recycling, but anyway, kind of what this guy was talking about. I've contacted the Parks Department 3 times about all the plastic that's in the Lake Highlands Park. It's really a dump with a creek and a pond. And I've not been able to get any response at all. How do you go about asking for help?
I can connect you with your park board representative. That's probably a great place to start, and then they can start to have those discussions. The District 9 Park Board representative, usually I'll take an issue and they'll run it through the different channels that it needs to go to different departments of the city and kind of be the liaison. So I can connect you there. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Are you in District 10?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Another great resource is 311. I was out riding the other day, saw that the Royal Oaks Country Club fence is literally falling onto the bike trail, which is their responsibility. Called 311. Well, actually, I did it on the app because it was a 30-minute wait on 311. But it'll show up that someone made that complaint or improvement, and they have to track it. They have to report these open 311 cases. They have to report how many people have reported and so forth. So I think the accountability helps when you make those formal complaints, because the city has to respond in some way. And we do have a couple opportunities in District 10 coming up. We're doing a park cleanup on April 23rd at Hamilton Park, which is an area that could use some beautification. We're doing a cleanup at Watercrest Park, which is kind of where the new bike trail attaches for Lake Highlands Trail on April 30th. So there are some opportunities to get involved, and a lot of it's just citizens.
Well, it'd be nice to set up a cleanup for that.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that.
I actually put it out in the neighborhood once, and I think one person showed up.
Okay.
So,
Carla?
Is the city looking to put solar panels on schools?
So that's actually DISD. And so the city and DISD are two separate entities.
Right.
But I don't know. That's a very good question. If DISD is considering installing renewable energy. That's,
Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. It's as part of the group Climate Reality, we had a member who was kind of taking it upon herself to reach out to DISD for discussions with solar. So she was very involved with speaking with them prior to the pandemic. But then I think, their eyes went other places, as they had many issues to deal with. So I don't know how those discussions are continuing, but DISD and solar does come up pretty regularly.
And to follow up on that, Paula and Carla, one thing about things like schools is that there's not a lot of money there, right? But there are bond packages. So to have RISD or DISD have a bond package that specifically has $100 million to put solar panels on every single school and power the schools by their own energy, and also show the kids how cool that is. That could be a bond package thing that.
Or talk to Elon Musk and say he doesn't need to buy Twitter and he can just.
What other questions? Let's take 2 more questions.
So I heard something in the news the other day, and it was just a very small snippet, something about the EPA had targeted like Dallas, Fort Worth, and I think Houston for our emissions and that sort of thing. I was just curious what effect that would have on what our local government is going to do and how they're responding to that.
so what she's referring to is the EPA is doing an evaluation on whether or not we met our attainment goals. We didn't. We didn't. And so we are, the EPA is evaluating a reclassification of whether or not we meet attainment. So we're, they have levels of attainment, moderate, severe, non-attainment. And so they're going to take a look at whether we met those goals and whether we need to be reclassified. Reclassification would create a new state implementation plan. If you've ever gone to the North Central Texas Council of Governments website, they have the state implementation plan there, and it talks about all of the different ways as a region we are going to act together to bring the air quality into an attainment status. And so they'll revisit the SIP, and we will have new limits and thresholds on emissions. And until we can bring our air quality into attainment. And so we've set these goals years and years and years ago. Years and years and years have passed. We have not met them, and so they're going to get stricter until we can come into compliance.
So follow-up question on that, because I don't know the answer. How does funding happen for that? So like, let's say the federal government says you need to really ratchet down your air quality. Do they cut off funding for programs, or do they increase funding to help us counter that?
That is a good question.
Because I could see they could do both.
Yeah.
Depends on what color your state is. Or your senator is.
So I think that some programs can get additional funding in order to support additional measures by municipalities. As Commissioner Daniels remarked, we haven't seen much of that.
Zippo.
Yeah, and
Zippo.
so
1991.
yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah. So it's a challenge, definitely a challenge.
What's the last question? Burning questions on people's minds. Dr. Salter?
Do you work with Reed Brennan?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, I mean, everyone here should know that every time the legislature meets, it tries to strip local control and decrease the amount of regulation on things like concrete batch plants. And if you can give it to him how to contact Rita, she would very much like for you to write testimony, appear in person, call your local representatives, and complain about these bills number by number. There were at least 10 concrete batch plants. She asked me, and I called my Congress people, which I live in East Texas, and I wrote medical testimony about the effect of particulate matter from these batch plants on schools. They're trying to get all these regulations relaxed. They're trying to strip building code enforcement and requiring people to put EVs, if you want to, into your charging into your home. So there's so much the legislature can do, and she works for Public Citizen. And I'm sure Brian can get you her information.
Rita is actually a member of the Environmental Commission.
Well, I'm sure she is.
And yes, she is our technical advisor. I'll also share that the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality is undergoing a sunset review right now. And sunset is essentially when the legislature looks at their efficiency and their sort of objectives and determines whether or not they're meeting them. So there are opportunities now through June to provide feedback on TCEQ. And yes, we do have some air quality experts at our disposal that work for the commission. She's a technical advisor in the air quality area, and she is a tremendous resource. And so yes, your voice is probably the sharpest tool that we have in some of these issues at the state level. So definitely use that. And if I could just
Sure.
plug that.
Yes.
So
Well, she's public citizen.
But she's,
Rita's
does
public
both.
citizen.
I mean, she's involved with both.
Well, she works for public citizen.
Yes.
Yes.
So I wanted to share just a few more resources for you. The commission's website is called dallasclimateaction.com. And there you will find all of our meeting information, our agendas, our past meeting recordings, email addresses to contact each of our commissioners and our technical panel members. And then I wanted to plug two upcoming events that we have, very exciting. This week on Tuesday, we will have the North Texas Climate Symposium. It's the 5th annual. Our keynote speaker is Dr. Earthia Nance, who is the brand new Region 6 EPA administrator, and her focus is on climate action and on environmental justice. And so we are very excited about that. It is a virtual event, and the registration for that is on our website on the calendar at dallasclimateaction.com. I also wanted to share that we are on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok as @DallasEnvironmental. We share all of our upcoming meeting information. We share events like this one and ways that you can connect with the commissioners. District 10 does not currently have an environmental commissioner. They're working their way through the appointment process, but have yet to join the commission. The next event and opportunity that you have to interact with us and meet the rest of the commission is going to be at EarthX. EarthX is a celebration of Earth Day. It'll happen at Kay Bailey Hutchison Convention Center Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of next weekend. It is family friendly, it's free, and there will be so many cool opportunities to learn about technology, the different organizations that are working in our area to improve the environment and increase sustainability.
And take Dart down there.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
And we
do
also
that.
have Dallas My Park Day
Yes.
next
we
weekend
do.
as well, April 23rd.
Yes.
I think every district has a city park that they're cleaning up, and District 10 is the one I'm aware of, which is Hamilton Park. So you can get that on the Parks Department website. Paula, do you want to say some parting words before we transition out of this?
Yes, I think Kathryn did not mention that she's one of the speakers, one of the featured speakers on the North Texas Climate Symposium event on Tuesday. So hopefully a lot of people will be able to join. I do hope some people will come out to EarthX and meet us as we're out there and talk to other city officials. There'll be a big city pavilion. So, 311 will be there. Lots of people will be there. So take that as your opportunity to come out and interact with city officials and the Environmental Commission. And do follow us on our social media apps. And thank you for the opportunity to be here. And I'm very happy that no one had to tell me that I was on mute.
No, you did great. Thank you so much for coming on Easter weekend. And just a round of applause to our guests. We're going to treat.
Sorry, the virtual meeting on Tuesday, isn't that in the morning, like at 11?
Yes, 10 to noon.
10 to noon.
Yes, thank you.
Where did you say EarthX is gonna be? I thought it was at Fair Park last time.
It was,
Clay
it's
Bailey.
Clay Bailey this year.
It'll be cute.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition into our membership meeting, which of course you are welcome to stay for. But before we do that, I do see that we have one person I want to recognize, and then one candidate here that we want to give her the courtesy of speaking. So the person I wanted to recognize is our former gubernatorial candidate and former sheriff, Lucy Bazan. And we do have a candidate that we would like to have come up. We did talk a little bit about school boards and schools, college trustees and stuff. So Catalina Garcia, could you come up and please tell us about your campaign? And we still are on Zoom, so if you can just stand
Oh,
behind
there?
this chair, that would be great. Good to see you again. You're welcome. So we'll give you, how about 2 minutes? That sound good?
Yeah, that's all I needed. Good morning. My name is Dr. Catalina Garcia, and I'm a retired anesthesiologist from Baylor Hospital. And I've always been involved with students. I was part of a community college committee to Dr. Wright Lassiter back in the 80s. And I've kind of kept my hand in with the students in terms of mentoring, tutoring, teaching, and also on Saturday hiring them so I could work on some of their other bad habits. Clerically, you know, they don't know how to spell, they don't know how to make sentences. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And so now I find that I want to contribute, and I decided to contribute through Dallas College. The first thing I want to tell you is the horror I just found out a couple of weeks ago through our research.
Oh, you met Lynn Davenport, your opponent?
Yes, well, no, not that. I knew about that part. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. I didn't realize it was so hard to run for office. I've increased my confidence and admiration of political candidates now. The graduation rate for Dallas College, according to the college scoreboard of the USA Department of Education, nobody's played with those figures then, right? 9%. I was absolutely horrified. 61% withdrawal, with no follow-up, with no trying to find out how and why these people are pulling out or any attempts at retention at all. That made me want to run even harder because I'm very much a student advocate. I have more in common with the students. I come from humble backgrounds and I worked through myself through high school. I started working at the age of 14 at night and on the weekends, except Sunday. You know, you couldn't used to work on Sunday because everything was closed. So that's how much I've been around. But I'm asking you, you can't endorse me because it's a non-partisan position. But I'm asking everybody in this room to please contact 5 people that you personally know and tell them what a good candidate I am. I am the candidate for this job. I have 40 years of board experience. I'm a problem solver as a physician and anesthesiologist. I have been involved with Dallas for forever, and I want to continue this involvement. So please contact your friends. May 7th is the election date. Please go vote. Thank you all very much.
Well, great. So I don't believe we had any other candidates. I saw John Bryan out there, but he, I believe, had another obligation, so he's not going to be able to speak to us. If he does come back.
What's he running for?
He's running for House District 114 in the runoff. Yes, John Bryan. Okay, so we're going to move into our membership part of the meeting. And we'll go ahead and I'll start out with saying that unfortunately, we don't have a president's report because the current president of the club, Dale McEwen, passed away a month or so ago, and we're all heartbroken by that. So we've kind of been trying to fill the major void that he has had with the club. So not a president's report, but we will talk about that role in the new business part of the meeting. For vice president's report, the vice president specifically, which is myself, is tasked with doing programming. So, you know, as we saw Kendall Scudder doing great programming last year, we tried to continue that. Today's program, I thought, went pretty well. I really like the sustainability part of it, great speakers. In May, we have our picnic. So May 21st at White Rock, not White Rock, Lake Highlands North Rec Center, right off the church. We'll be having our picnic. And everyone's welcome to come if you want to sign up to bring some food or help out.
Sheets out there,
Judy can
please.
help you with that. We do have a happy hour coming up in May, which we can talk about that under the activities and events. So a lot of good stuff. In June, we are moving back to CC Young. Yay. Space here. The church has been wonderful to us. Tim has done a great job, and Bruce Anton of getting us in here. We do like the space, but we do feel that we do have members and former members that are at CC Young that we would like to make sure that we can be there for them because they've been there for us. So we're gonna move it back there, see how things go. It's a little bit bigger space, a little bit, a little bit different layout, but we think we'll be good going back there. And so we don't have a program yet. If you do have program ideas, let me know. We'd definitely like to entertain that. And then we don't have speakers for July, August, or September. And then we have the chili supper in October, and we'll round out the year, and we're all excited about it. So that'll be my report for Vice President. Let's go ahead and have Tim Sexton, who is our treasurer and our PAC treasurer. So come on up, Tim.
Hi, everybody. Hi, online folks. Great program today. Thank you. Very interesting. I am the treasurer of our organization, which means I report all the income and the outgo. Plus, I keep us legal with the state of Texas. The state of Texas has a ethics commission, and we are obligated, because we're a PAC, to report our income and outgo to the Texas Ethics Commission every month. So that has been completed for March, and the figures I'm going to give you are for March because that's the last full month we're into. So our income for March was $228. Our expenses were $186.46, which means we have a balance of $4,224.45. That's our balance, and I think that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Just to follow up with what Tim said, we do have a good bank balance, which is pretty good for a club. So if you need to renew your membership, please talk to Judy. And the majority of the money that we actually get approved from the membership does go to helping elect other candidates. So we don't actually give money to individual candidates. We give money back to the Dallas County Democratic Party and their coordinated campaign that helps elect all Democrats. So your money goes to a good place. I think we do a great job of being a good steward of it. So thanks for all your hard work, Tim. Okay, next up, we will have a membership. I hope I don't always change the order. So come on, Judy.
I'd like to have another meeting about the environment. I would like to extend that. If there's any more people to invite to speak,
Sure.
I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I just think that's a huge topic that we could, I just don't think enough people care about it. It really makes me crazy after a while.
And my little heart just bled because I totally forgot to mention when we were talking about events and opportunities to get involved, we actually have a lake spot next to the bathhouse that we clean up once a month, and Debbie helps lead that, and we are looking for someone to take that over from her. She's kind of partnering with the Troop 890 and the Scouts to get that done, but we would like someone that is passionate.
Yeah,
about
I love Al Ortiz.
Yes.
Took care of that for many years, and Al is having to kind of give it up to help take care of his wife. Wife's got some illnesses going on. I know Karen and I met Debbie this past Saturday because the cubbies couldn't come out and do any cleaning. And so we worked about an hour or so. I wasn't real because I fell last week at my house. So I've been so sore I can hardly move. But thank you, Karen and Debbie, and they did their thing and she's got the grabbers and all kinds of stuff. She had water and whatever, but we could certainly use some help out there. It's the second Saturday of the month. They meet like we were there at 10 o'clock, 10 to 11 o'clock. So it's, it's like an hour, okay? And we just run around and it's disgusting. I mean, I really get frustrated with human behavior by looking at what I saw just by hobbling around out there. It really is very sad. And I used to travel a lot for my job. And, I always like to look and talk about what other states. I remember Colorado, which is an incredible place if you've never been there. But 15 years ago, I remember them into recycling, and they were all about the environment. And I came back and I thought, why isn't everybody doing this? Why isn't everybody talking about it?
Mhm.
So you take states like Oregon, Washington, Colorado, maybe it's their mountains, maybe it's something that they grew up in, but I tell you, we need to all have that attitude because it really is amazing. And I don't know how to spread it. Yeah, maybe I'm doing it now. Canada, oh my God, I have a friend that lives in Toronto. She has given me lecture after lecture about how we don't appreciate our environment. And you go there and they just don't, where they're all about picking up and you don't throw anything down and it's amazing. You could eat off the streets of downtown Toronto, I swear to God. Anyhow, that's
So
enough
to
of that.
summarize,
I
we
summarize.
need more members so we can help.
Yes.
We need to remember Canada and follow.
Yeah, I know. I told Rita I need to fly her down here.
So tell us
Well,
about
and as
members.
long as that other guy was the president, she wouldn't come visit. Just to let you know. Go Mavs today, by the way, in case you didn't know, I'm a real Mavs fan and they do play. We're at about 256 membership.
Yeah.
I think that's great. I'm getting ready to do some purging because of some folks who haven't paid their dues. So
Are you gonna recycle them?
I'm gonna call them before I purge them.
Okay.
I'm gonna give them some heads up, so they'll get an opportunity, Carla, before I do purge them. But I do go through this every year about the same time. It's about third year to be membership chair. Anyway, so we're sitting around there. Yes, younger members, we'd love to have some younger members. And as I was hobbling around out there trying to clean up the lake, I was thinking that, boy, I used to run around out here and just with no effort whatsoever. Anyway, thank you for allowing me this position. If you do owe us dues, please kind of help us out here. Okay, and if not, please think about it. Anyway.
We're also, this is a good time to say this, Judy has served for 3 years in this position. We are looking to look to next year where we do have new officers come in, new leadership. So if you do have an interest, we
Yes.
definitely can evaluate. And we do have a past president, Carla.
Yes, we do, Carla. Yeah.
Carla and
Doug was
president.
president when I joined
Yeah.
way back when 2016
Carla,
when
Karen.
Carla got me involved in this club. So anyhow, thank you all. And another happy hour coming up. We love those happy hours.
All right, great, thank you. Next up, Secretary's report. Rhonda, are you gonna get that in lieu of?
I think maybe our secretary provided copies of the minutes, and so they were on people's chairs if people want to review and make a motion.
Okay, we'll take a moment to review those. And just for reference, these are posted on the website for the meeting officially. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for the March meeting?
I so move.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting minutes are approved for March. Great. If there's not an additional secretary report, we will move on to our acting vice president of events and activities, Karen. And if you'd like to be an officer, you don't have to be named Carla or Kara.
Like a C
There's a
group.
lot of C's.
Is it Kate?
And then Carol Donovan was a former
Yeah.
president. Yeah, so lots of C's. and Ks.
Want to thank everybody who came to our last happy hour at District 9. We had a good time, good food, and as always, good Democrats. So it was fun. As Brian mentioned, next happy hour is Thursday, May 19th at the Lake House, which is Northwest Highway and East Lother. We are supporting the Lake Highlands Restaurant Group. So come join us May 19th, 5 to 7, the Lake House. 2 days later, Saturday, May 21st, is our Lake Highlands picnic. we are meeting at Lake Highlands North Park Recreation Center on Church Road. That's between Adelia and Skillman. If anybody would like directions on how to get there, see me. I have directions. There's also sign-up sheets at the table out front. Sign up for a dessert, side dish. I've asked that you put an email address so I can remind you that you signed up to bring something. But that's going to be Saturday, May 21 from 11 to 1 at Lake Highlands North Park Recreation Center.
Tim's got his hand up here.
Tim?
I want to let people know that normally we have our picnic at Flagpole Hill. In the past, we've gone there for years and years and years. The reason we're not having it at Flagpole Hill this year is because they're doing a kind of a major construction project up there, and they have parking blocked off, and it just suited our needs better at the suggestion of the Parks Department that we go to one of the other facilities, which is not too far away, still within our jurisdiction. So that's the Lake Highlands North Rec Center, same kind of deal with the pavilion. So it'll be a very similar event, just, and we'll probably go back to Winter Point, I'm sorry, Flagpole Hill for next year, possibly when this construction project is complete.
And
Thank you.
it's free, it's fun, it's a great opportunity to bring a neighbor, bring a friend, bring someone that hasn't attended a meeting. And Karen will hopefully, or Judy, I'm sorry, Judy will helpfully sign them up to your meeting. So Karen will welcome them too. What else, Karen?
Okay, as you all know, this coming Friday is Earth Day, April 22. And as you know, our Mother Earth needs a lot of TLC. And so you're saying, well, what can one person do? Well, one person becomes two, becomes more. And as was mentioned today, the landfills are full. This is a great opportunity for you to get a sustainable coffee mug. Scan the code, bring your coffee mug to the meetings, to the picnic, and then take it home. And we're not putting anything in the landfills. Mother Earth thanks you, we thank you. So these are ceramic and tin, and take your choice, but get your coffee mug and help protect Mother Earth.
Or bring your own water bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can put water in these mugs too. They can be used as well.
Actually, as of June, we're going to have a water container. So no more plastic bottles of water at the meeting in June. You will be able to fill your cup with water, Carla. So we are personally getting rid of the plastic bottles.
Right.
Okay?
And
Yes.
just because I'd love to follow up on this topic, we did have plastic bottles before, and we actually purchased as a club recycling containers so we could
Yes.
take the bottles with us as we left. So yeah, the club is very passionate about Mother Earth.
Absolutely.
Oh, and Kathryn, I saw you come back in. Judy said earlier that the presentation was so good today that she wants to do another one and follow up on this topic. So, you know.
Excellent.
I have a question. I was telling you, I traveled a lot, Kathryn, and I saw other cities 10 years ago doing things, and I would come home and I'd get so frustrated. Why the hell aren't we doing this stuff? You know? And I was, my friend in Toronto, she lectures me constantly about our lack of how we care about our environment. So.
Lack of Democrats in leadership is what that is.
Yeah, right. Kind of what I told her. Anyhow, but I want more.
Karen, did you have something to talk to us about? with,
Okay, one last thing. We are extremely fortunate. There are thousands of people in Ukraine that are fighting for basic needs like a toothbrush, a bar of soap. So I'm hoping at this Easter season, you can find it in your heart to take the change out of your pocket, take a bill out of your wallet, and donate it to the Ukrainian Humanitarian Relief Fund. This will be available today and at our happy hour in May and our picnic in May, and then we will send the money off. But this is a special season. I'm just asking that you think of some other people who are struggling. Okay, one last thing. What do you call a line of rabbits walking backwards? A receding hairline. That's it for events.
Just so you know, she
Okay.
was an elementary school teacher.
I'm gonna say she started to encroach on my dad.
Yeah.
Okay, I believe that includes,
Could I say something about the convention real quick?
yes, well, let me,
Sure.
I'll get to that. in
Call-
just
call
one
me.
second. So I believe that includes our officer reports for today. If there's a sunshine committee report that I'm not aware of, if anyone would like to make that, I'll entertain that. No, so that concludes our official officer reports. So now let's move on to new business, which we can have. What we are going to do for new business is we do have 2 officer positions that we need to have filled. The first is the office of president, which, as we mentioned earlier, Dale McEwen was not able to complete his term due to passing away, which we're all extremely sad about. We continue to grieve about that. But to keep the club functioning, we do need a president and leadership to continue. I wanted to be clear that I did not want to step up to that role as vice president. I thought it was only fair for the club to be able to have a voice in that, rather than just us putting someone into that place. So that's what we're going to do today. The officers have met. We've discussed it. We've asked other candidates, which we're not going to name names, to possibly lead the club with the club's affirmation. We did have some interest, but the person that we felt was best for the club and best right now for the club, and that the officers would like to present to the membership, is Judge Doug Skemp. So, Judge, would you like to say a word?
I do.
No, first let's see if there's someone else who wants to be nominated.
Yeah.
Oh, don't try to
Okay,
get.
I was just curious if you want to say a word before we move into that part of it. So,
I'll just say that I feel humbled to take over this role. If you see fit to have me do so, I would absolutely wish it was under different circumstances than what we're now facing. And hopefully we can keep it going. As I've heard all of these committee people report, they do such a good job. They make being president pretty easy, actually, because the committee people, all the secretaries and treasurers, membership, the events, they do all the hard work. So I thank all of them for being here, and hopefully I can be an adequate fill-in until the end of the year if you want me.
Absolutely.
I would like to ask for any nominations for president of the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats from the floor. Are there any nominations for president of the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats from the floor? Are there any nominations for the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats president from the floor? It's standard to ask 3 times, I believe. Tim?
I move that Judge Skimp be elected by acclamation.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm
Okay.
still in president mode.
Yeah.
No.
Congratulations. So Judge Skemp will take over presidency through the end of the year. And we're already going to be looking for replacements if anyone wants to come in next year for all of our positions. So the other position, which is newly created, which we did have someone filling in for it while we went through the process of making sure we're following our bylaws. And that position is Vice President for Activities, which is currently being filled as an appointment from the board by Karen Cool. So thank you, Karen. She would like to, the board decided that we would like to continue with her in a formal role and put that out to the club for voting in formally. So the board would like to present to the club Karen Cool as Vice President for Activities / Events. So Karen, do you have anything to say?
I'll do it.
Do we have any nominations from the floor for Vice President of Activities and Events? Any nominations from the floor for Vice President of Activities and Events? Any nominations from the floor for Vice President of Activities and Events? Okay, seeing Tim.
I'd like to make a motion that Karen be elected by acclamation.
I second.
All in favor?
Any opposed?
That's a fire review.
Great.
There's one more position that that we need to fill, and it probably just deserves mentioning right now, and that's the VP of Communications. I think that we
Yes.
call it communications,
Yes.
and they're responsible for all the communications and the
Website and all
Yeah,
that.
email, social media.
social media and all that stuff. And I don't know if there's anybody here willing to do that today, but I just want to make people aware that we are looking for a person to do that, somebody that has that technical experience and ability to run a communications operation.
Who's
For our club.
doing it right now?
Brian.
Well, we're kind of all, yeah, right.
Well, I think we all do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I took over the Wix program. So there's a little bit, everybody's kind of separated a little bit of this, but Brian does the majority of the website and sending out the stuff. So he's got the majority of it.
Well, and since you referenced me and Tim did as well, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank my lovely girlfriend, Tracy King, for being gracious enough to let me do those things at night when, it could be family time, but I'm like, I have to get this email out. So, I love you.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you,
Yes.
Tracy.
Okay, is there,
Keep it in the family.
And there is a woman.
or another man?
Ah.
Okay, so is there any other new business for the club? Okay, if no additional new business, I would like to bring up another guest speaker to talk to us about the Senate District Convention that happened recently. This is David Griggs.
Yay.
Thank you all. Well, actually, I'm going to talk about the state convention
Okay.
because our Senate district conventions are over. I hope some of you were able to go. I'm David Griggs. I'm your SDEC committee man for Senate District 16, at least currently, because I have been redistricted into Senate District 12. So I will be hoping to continue as the committee man for Senate District 12. Susan Bradley, who most of you know, is still going to be in Senate District 16. So every 10 years, as you know, we redistrict and everything changes. Most of you probably are still in 16. Some of you might be in 2. My district's
23.
23, okay. Well, if you are in 12, you would be in the Park Cities, Preston Hollow, the Metro Crest cities of Addison, Farmers Branch, Carrollton, Coppell, North Irving. May not be very many people in 12 here, but I hope you were able to go to your Senate District Convention. The reason that I wanted to come up and say this is this. Our state convention is going to be in Dallas this summer on the 14th through 16th. Basically, the 2 main days are Friday the 15th and Saturday the 16th.
What month?
Of July. So the thing that is important is if you went to your Senate District Convention in 23 or 16 or 2 or 12, you are already a delegate. But if you didn't, you have until Monday to get signed up for that. We have 30 days after the Senate District Convention to sign people up. Susan and I'm working on 12, she's working on 16. We're trying to get as many people signed up to be delegates to our state convention as possible. Now, if you've been to the state convention before, you usually have to travel, you have a hotel. 2 years from now, we'll be in El Paso, which is wonderful, but it's a little bit of a drive. You just drive downtown this summer, okay? This is our year to show up. And we really do need to have a big showing, particularly this year from the host city. So please do that. Go to Carolyn, TexasDemocraticConvention.com. That's the website. I want to recognize my colleague, Dr. Carolyn Salter from Senate District 3. And colleague Teresa Daniel. How long did you serve? That's right. All right, well, that's it. Thank you. And Kathryn, thanks for the presentation. I got lost. I went to CC Young and I was late getting here, but I know you did a great job. So, and thank you, Brian, for having an environmental program during Earth Month. And that's all I have. Just be sure you sign up, and if not, see me afterwards and I'll make sure that you get to the right place so that you can become a delegate by Monday. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's a delegate so far? Anyone?
All right.
So a fair amount. Yeah, good. Yeah, we want a great showing there. And if there's any opportunities for Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats to have a massive presence and a big table, we'll take it.
For $1,000, you can have a table.
Okay.
Since you all have a huge treasury, you can actually get a booth at the convention.
Okay.
For $1,000?
Yeah.
So we do have to have the membership.
Talk
vote
to
on
them,
it.
they might
We'll
get a
think about
better deal, but that's what they're saying now for nonprofits, small groups.
And it goes to a good cause.
That's right.
True.
The Texas Democrats.
True. We can always share it with maybe our sister group. Okay, so if there is no other in the back.
Janice.
Yes.
There's almost no mention whatsoever of the Democratic primary runoff.
Good point.
Good point.
For today?
Yes.
Or May
election?
24th,
May
to
24th.
encourage people.
Sure.
Are we not gonna have any kind of forum, at least between the two 114? Candidates?
So we have had.
It's our biggest race in years.
Sure. Thank you for reminding me.
That's my first point.
Okay. Can I address that point
Yes.
first? We did have John Bryant here last meeting, and he spoke with us for probably 5 or 6 minutes. He attended our happy hour in February or March. And we have heard from Alex Gaia.
She was here today.
She was here today. So we have heard from the candidates, but you are right. We have not gone back and re-endorsed based on our candidate not making the runoff. The executive board talked about that. We batted it around a little bit and decided we didn't want to do that. So this is a good forum to hear from the candidates and to kind of make your opinions. So that's kind of where we are with that.
It's different than having a forum and asking questions.
Yeah,
See what their
Sure.
positions are.
Sure.
Seeing what they have to say.
Okay.
And as some of this has developed, I mean, I'm a precinct chair and I know some of the rest of them are. In the beginning, I personally had, the only two candidates I had heard of, of course, were John Bryant, our former congressman, and Kendall, who had run for several offices and had been a second SDEC member. But the other candidates, I personally had never even heard of them.
Okay.
And as it developed and forums passed, maybe there's questions that we ought to be able to ask them. That
Okay.
we haven't had it.
Can I?
I'm not talking about.
Can I ask a question? And this is due to my ignorance and not knowing. Is there a forum happening that is going to be a debate between the two?
I'm not aware of it.
Okay.
Usually that's with individual clubs who usually
Sure.
do that.
Okay. So,
Could I address that?
yes, Tim.
You know, in the primary, there were probably 10 forums that those 5 candidates attended.
Sure.
So, Janice, I'm sure you attended at least 1 or 2 or 3 of those. And you know, the candidates' positions are pretty well known. So when we talked about it at our board meeting, I think we decided that, you know, their positions are pretty clear and they're out there. We're down to the final 2. We really didn't need to go through that process again.
But that encourages people to go vote, right, as we advertise.
Sure.
Those kinds of events. So I'm willing to do anything I can do to help.
Okay. So we will have an opportunity to hear from both of them again at May 21st picnic, which is before their runoff on the 24th. However, I'm not opposed necessarily to doing another meeting with the 2 of them. If,
So just deciding 5 or 6 questions and have each one of them answer that when they present themselves. Especially
At the picnic.
what if we did that at the picnic? What if we had made a special?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Instead
push
of
there.
it being a forum,
Okay.
instead of it being
like
just an
that idea.
introduction, it becomes a hybrid. But that we pick the issues that are really critical to us.
Okay.
So that really filled what questions are the best ones.
Would that help with kind of helping clarify the
Well,
positions?
I'm already committed. We're not-
Okay,
You're not gonna change. my mind.
sure.
But I was just noticing that this is an intimate group
Sure.
and that sometimes people speak and people have questions that other people hadn't thought of.
Okay.
And if y'all discuss it, that's fine, because I want to bring up a major issue.
Okay. So just to put a bow on that, at the May 21st picnic, we will proactively ask Ambassador Bryant and Alexandra Gallo to answer a few questions, 2 or 3 questions. And if you have questions, feel free to submit those to admin@LHWRdemocrats.org, and we'll field those. And we'll kind of use that as an opportunity to hear from them at that point. So,
That's 3 days before the election. These are gonna be a couple of really busy people. Do we even know if they're gonna have time to show up?
they will show up for the Lake Highland White Rock
Okay.
Democrats. I'm confident.
I get concerned about one showing up and the other having a conflict and.
Sure.
We can have them send their answers.
Yeah.
To the
And,
questions.
and we can read them out loud.
My only concern about this is, a lot of people have already voted by this.
True.
Early vote is over. If you vote by mail, you better mail your ballot, so, you know.
Yeah, I think this would target people that are just undecided still.
I agree with you. I've seen Janice.
That's her.
We're all older. I have seen a bunch of the candidate forums, and they have both changed a lot and grown. And to see what they were like when they were at our forum here is a lot different.
Sure.
And I agree with Janice.
Okay.
It's important to
Yeah.
hear them.
Well, that was the easy topic, right?
Yeah.
So what is,
Much harder.
okay,
We have talked about our role in Earth Day, and we talked about our events and so forth. And Commissioner Teresa knows that I'm kind of nutcase early voting person. And so a couple of us requested the list from the county of the rejections of applications for ballot and the rejections of ballots. And as a Democratic group, it seems to me we ought to have a concern for the process that is over and above the average voter or even Democratic activists. So with that in mind, I just want to pinpoint one thing. We did get our lists, and of course the county, who is obnoxiously adverse to transparency, sent us a list of each of those groups. Rejections of applications and rejections of ballots. Rejections of applications would blow some of your minds when you see some of the famous people. Y'all all read about Willie Nelson.
Yes.
Well, there's some other very famous people, certainly high dollar Democrats here in Dallas, whose ballots were rejected. But let's pinpoint it to our spot. CC Young. I just at a glance, because I am interested in what's happening in 114, went down the list, and it's not grouped in precincts. It's not grouped by address. Somebody much smarter than I am would have to figure that out. But I bet you there were 15 or 20 people whose apps alone were rejected out of CC Young. Of course, they didn't give it to us in terms of Democrats and Republicans. So you have no way of knowing. But should we not have a position on
Well,
this, or
I'll
have
speak-
somebody
yeah.
who knows how to
Yeah.
do something to say to those people, come down at the beginning of our meeting, let us see if there's something about your application that we can help with. I don't know if we have a contact over there.
You can have a contact over there, but I do know too that I have been adamant that each application that was rejected and each ballot that was rejected, that each one of those registered voters were then followed up on to see what happened and how can that be fixed.
That was gonna be my question, Teresa. Are these people being followed up with?
Yes.
I mean, if you get my application and you reject it, are you calling me and letting me know that my application's been rejected?
Well, that's not how it works. State law says you get a letter, and the letters came out after the election was over.
So I appreciate you saying that, and
I mean,
yes,
should we think about it, even if we think about it from the fall?
sure.
Should we not?
So,
think
you know,
about
in my
it?
head, the first thing is the vice president of activity or vice president of the club right now is let's do a program, but that wouldn't address voting in May. So that might not do anything. I do,
Wouldn't the people who were voting in May, if they've already been approved, wouldn't
They would
they
be
be
fine.
already getting
Sure.
the mail?
yeah, sure.
You know what I'm trying to say?
David,
They're
do
on the
you have
annual-
a-
I'm not talking about the annual checkoffs that were
Sure.
accepted.
David, do you
I'm
have a
talking
thought
about
on
the
this?
thousands.
Sure.
But they've had a chance to repair that by now.
Right.
That's
That's
been-
what I'm saying.
Let me say something about what the state party's doing, because
Wait just a second, David. If you're an 85-year-old and you get a letter that says you didn't get, you're not getting a ballot, or your ballot's not accepted because your ID numbers are not on file at the county, which is the major reason in Dallas County. Second being they didn't do the checkoff of Democrat or Republican primary was the second major reason. But the first one is that your numbers are not on file. Well, I'm a 74-year-old. When I registered to vote, the Social Security numbers and driver's license were optional, and I certainly wasn't giving them any information. I'm a child of the sixties. We don't give out anything we don't have to. So now, had Janice applied for a ballot, I would have been denied a ballot. Now, this is apart from the just general screw ups.
Sure.
The woman in my precinct who was told she had to vote provisional, which was wrong, should have voted a regular, she voted provisional. Then she got a letter saying it wasn't counted because she hadn't voted in the right precinct. If you're an election judge, that ought to send up all kinds of red flags. You're gonna have
So
to.
Janice,
We
we are
need to have
running up
programs.
on time, okay? So I would like to ask if there is an actionable item that you would like to propose to the club, that we will take a motion to do that. If you have an actionable item that we can actually do as a club, because I believe, and not to speak for everyone, but I believe that we all understand that our voting rights are under attack, and the way that the ballots are being cast out and so forth is wrong. But for the sake of our club, we need to have an actionable item for us to proceed with this business right now. So is there an actionable item that you would like to propose?
I would propose that our activity person reach out to CC Young to see if there could be a setup meeting somehow, and I don't know how it would happen. If people need assistance with filling out their apps.
Okay.
And there's a whole string of rules for any of that, so I'm not asking any of y'all to get indicted.
Okay.
But maybe if somebody could just reach out to see if it would be possible, and they might say, no, we don't want to do any politics.
So we have a motion on the floor. And the motion, if I can restate, is to have a representative of the Lake Highlands Waterways Democrats reach out to CC Young to see if we can have a meeting with those people's ballots that have been rejected to possibly help them with remediation. Is that accurate?
Or apps, right?
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. All in favor of, so that opens it up to floor discussion. So we can discuss that motion. Any thoughts on that?
Well, Emory Burton, who is a member or a former member, lives over there and actually hosts a political meeting discussion group.
Okay.
So he may be a good contact over there.
Okay. Any other thoughts on that?
What the state party students?
Well, I could say that here or after you vote, whichever.
Maybe save that.
I
for
think it's
us.
part of
Now.
the discussion.
Are you? Sure.
Well, it might have something to do with this. I'm certainly supporting the motion, but the state, I chair the legislative committee, and we heard from Rose Austin, who is the voter protection staff person. The state party staff is working on a major brochure, follow whatever, for 5 points of how to vote by mail, to make sure you do it right. And that's being put together right now. May be ready before the runoff, certainly will be ready before the general. And I would suggest that someone who's ever a communications person maybe get that information, get it out to your members, get it out to the CC Young folks, and just make sure that everybody knows it's a simple 5-point thing. Make sure you do this, make sure you do that. If this doesn't happen, make sure you do that. So, because that's part of the problem. People are getting rejected and they don't reply, and they don't know what to do when they get rejected. See, and so that's what the state party is trying to do, is to circumvent this problem before it gets much, much worse in the fall. So I will try to help, and Susan can help get the information, hopefully be put on the state party website. But when that 5-point plan is ready to be rolled out, which should be very soon, we want to get that out to whoever you all think should get that information. So that's all I have to say.
Sure.
As a new person who came from Arkansas to Dallas and living in 5 different states, I've had to move around a lot. And in my experience this year, it's taken me a year to figure the system out. And I think it requires a person-to-person contact rather than reading about it in an email or in media. It's a face-to-face thing. It's a phone call. especially when you're talking about a new person or a person 85 years old. And I go down here to the hospital and, you know, we say, are you going to vote? Yeah, we want to vote. Or if you're a longtime resident, like I hear most of the people here, I think you're part of that system. You know where to go, when to go, how to do it. That's the problem. We've got new people coming in to Dallas, Texas. They don't know anything. Believe me, they have no clue. And those who've been moved around aren't thinking about the vote coming up on May 25th. That's the issue. And I don't know how we can speed it up other than a person-to-person meeting.
Okay, so you're in favor of the person-to-person. Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any other thoughts on that motion?
I live in Anderson County and I'm the committee woman for that Senate District 3. And the county, I mean, the state party sent us a ballot by mail application list in the van that we could then create a mini van list for, and people could call, everybody who could receive the ballot application.
That violates the law.
No, it doesn't
Yes, it
actually.
does. To reveal who has been sent a ballot by mail before the election, if it has not been counted, is against state law.
No, this is the ballot by mail application, not the ballot. No, it doesn't.
To
It doesn't.
reveal who the state law is written. That because we used to get the list out of the county if it'd been sent the ballot just based on the apps. And the legislature changed that, starting back with Steve Woolens.
Well,
It's now.
I think this might be outside of the purview of this motion.
My question is, maybe this man that you mentioned, maybe somebody who knows him,
Okay.
just have a conversation with him. I'd be happy to say, is there some way to have a meetup?
Can I make a recommendation for friendly amendment?
Sure.
To add that the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats to go to CC Young and ask Emery Burton if he would lead that conversation to those people that have had their applications rejected, or just have a listening session. That's my friendly amendment. So I'd like to close discussion on this and take a vote. All in favor of the approval of this motion and activity of having the Lake Highlands White Rock Democrats work with Emery Burton to have a listening session at CC Young to discuss voting applications and the process, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. We will do that. I will ask Carla and Janice if you could work on making that happen. And possibly,
What's the man's name again?
Emery.
Emery.
Sure.
I can email Emery.
Okay, wonderful. And
Would you
thank
just
you.
tell him the problem?
Sure, he might be aware of it, yeah. But thank you for, okay, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, and I'm glad that we have a forum that we can discuss things, you know, as new business, old business, and so forth.
If Mr. Burton is unable for some reason, one of our members, Sharon Kristen, resides in the CC as well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let you know after I hear from.
Okay. Wonderful. But thank you for bringing that up. I'm glad we were able to have an actionable item that we can move forward with. Good improvement, good suggestion. Are there other old business items before we adjourn for the day? Tim?
Move we adjourn.
Okay.
Can I
Second.
say one thing? I am running for an office, and this was put on my front porch, a box of these yesterday. And so I'm running for 1059, and I'm just so excited.
Precinct chair.
Precinct chair. Precinct chair.
1059 precinct.
Precinct chair, 1059. And I am so excited, and I really appreciate it here at 1059 to vote for me. I have a few of these.
Okay.
I have a huge box.
So we do need more precinct chairs. Thank you so much for stepping up with that. So we do have a motion on the floor.